Here's everything we know so far about Acura's brand new Integra.
Hey guys, what's going on and welcome back to Shifting Lanes. My name's Chad and today we are talking about one of the most iconic Japanese cars of all time. It was born out of Honda's ingenuity and it grew to become one of, if not, the best front-wheel drive sports car ever made.
To really understand what the Integra is all about, we need to take a trip down memory lane. During the late 80s, Japanese auto manufacturers, in an attempt to make more money, introduced luxury brands. This brought the world Lexus, Infiniti, and Acura. Most of these were upscale versions of their existing cars. One of Acura's models was the Integra. It was based on the Civic, but it was so much more than just a bougie Civic. The Integra got upgraded engines and suspension to go along with the more luxurious interior. In 1994, Acura brought us the third generation of Integra. A year later, they brought us the Integra GSR. The GSR was the Integra, but more power, more handling, and more spoilers. Acura wasn't done. 2 years later, in 1997, they gave us the Integra Type R, arguably the greatest front-wheel drive sports car ever made, even if it was no longer a luxury car. The Type R was a stripped-out track weapon for the street. For the fourth generation Integra, Honda North America decided it needed a new name. Everywhere else it was still called the Integra, but in North America it was now called the RSX. It boasted more power, edgier styling, and pretty much more, well, everything. In S trim, it made 210 horsepower from Honda's glorious K20A 4-cylinder engine. The K20A was a rev-happy, naturally aspirated 4-cylinder engine that just begged you to drive the pants off of it.
Sadly, due to dwindling sales, Honda and Acura decided to kill off the RSX in favor of focusing their front-wheel drive sports car aspirations into the Civic platform. Unfortunately, while the Integras were an elegant piece of design, they were subdued in their overall aesthetic, the Civics, well, they just kept getting funkier and weirder and uglier, and it all culminated in the current generation Civic Type R. Now, the Civic Type R is an absolute masterpiece when it comes to engineering. To get that level of performance and handling out of a front-wheel drive platform is truly remarkable. However, it looks like it was, well, over-designed if we're being kind. If we're being blunt, it's pig ugly. However, some good news is on the horizon.
When you look back at how popular Integras were in the import car scene and how much money they're currently fetching in today's money, you begin to understand just how big of a deal it is when earlier this year Acura announced they're bringing the Integra back.
That's right, Acura is bringing back the Integra, and they're not doing what some other manufacturers are doing, and that is taking an iconic nameplate and slapping it on a crossover. Mitsubishi, I'm looking in your exact direction. They are basing it off of the new Civic, which is exactly the same formula that brought us the original Integra. Now, Acura hasn't given us much detail beyond this fact other than a couple of images. However, if you take these images, you look at the new Civic, you can kind of get an idea and a really good picture of what the Integra is going to be like.
First off, based on the images, it appears the new Integra will be based on the Civic sedan. If you look at the C-pillar, you can see the designs are extremely similar. However, Acura insists the lift-back trunk will carry over from the Integras of the past. In the front, the bumper structure looks the same, and it would be fairly safe to assume it will get the Acura treatment to better sit in the current Acura model range, but it isn't too much of a stretch to think it'll share the same lines but have Acura's signature grille. Honda has decided to carry the previous generation Civic's engines into the 2022 model year. The base motor is a 2-liter 4-cylinder making a fairly underwhelming 150 horsepower. The optional engine is a 1.5-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder that chucks out 180 horsepower.
I should point out that both of these engines' performance mimics what the Integras of old used to make 25 years ago. However, when we're talking about a small car, these power levels aren't really that extreme. Small cars aren't meant to be power behemoths. They're meant to be more handlers. They're meant to be more engaging cars you can actually enjoy on the public streets, and you don't need a track to really get the most out of them. However, that being said, turbochargers are great and all. They add true power. but you'll lose a lot of the charm. Part of what made the Integras and Hondas really of old so great is that they squeezed out a ton of power from small displacement engines without the help of a turbocharger.
Speaking of charm, or more accurately, charming engagement, in the Civic you have to opt for the higher trim level if you want the pleasure of rowing your own gears. While I assume the Integra will carry over the Civic's manual option, it isn't inconceivable to see an OEM drop the manual transmission. See Aston Martin. They're dropping all manuals even though they promised us they wouldn't.
And this is why I, and really enthusiasts as a whole, have trust issues with manufacturers. The new Integra should come with a manual transmission option. That is not up for debate. However, when manufacturers look you dead in the eye and say, we are never getting rid of the manual, and then several months later they get rid of the manual, you can see why I'm slightly worried that there may not be a manual option. But I can say with some confidence that I believe the new Integras will at least give you the optional added-on feature of being able to row your own gears, which is huge for a car like this. Like I said, these little cars are about being back canyon carvers, back road monsters, where you can extract a lot of the performance out of the car without, well, I shouldn't say without breaking the law, without, let's just say, going lethal or even immediately imprisoned speeds. The manual is a huge part of engagement. Yes, they are slower, but that is not the point. You are an engaged piece of the actual act of driving, the actual act of going down a road. There is no better feeling than nailing a perfect heel and toe downshift in a manual transmission. Pulling a paddle or just pulling back on a stick just doesn't give you that. And I am confident that Honda is smart enough to keep the manual option in the Integra, especially since they don't really have to do any redesigning. They basically take the Civic's drivetrain and plop it over into the new Integra.
Like I said before, it is a safe bet that the Integra will share the same drivetrain options as the Civic. That means the slightly less charming turbocharged 1.5 liter is the most powerful option. What the new engine lacks in a pure visceral experience, it makes up for in other ways. We have driven the new Civic and the turbocharged engine is not short on excitement. The torque and power delivery are very impressive, and when you combine that with the Civic's capable chassis, it makes for an engaging, fun car to drive. Sprinkle some of that Integra magic on an already fun car to drive, and you should have the recipe for a truly fantastic driver's car.
Now, it should go without saying that we all expect there to be a higher performance variant down the road. Think of it as a new GSR. Given the times, I wouldn't be shocked if it is a hybrid. However, Honda needs to be very careful if they're going to hybridize a performance variant of the Integra. And what I mean by that is electric motors and batteries, for all the great things they provide, are heavy. And we are not talking about a big car here to start with. Every pound you add could potentially kill the feel of the car. And with hybrid technology, we're not talking about a small amount of weight. That weight, if it's too excessive, will just kill the overall feel of the car. Sure, it might make the car go like a bat out of hell in a straight line, but that's not what these cars are about. They are about going out on the weekend, saying goodbye, going into a remote corner of wherever the heck you live, hitting the twisties, getting everything, you, the car, nature, the road, everything in sync and just enjoying a drive. That's what these small performance cars are all about. Add too much weight and you kill that. And what about a Type R? Maybe, possibly. I mean, come on, it's based off of a Civic and Honda's giving us a brand new Type R Civic, so they have to give us an Integra Type R, right?
Honda just took the wraps off a camouflaged version of the next gen Type R. And joy of joys, it is significantly better looking than its predecessor. The lines are smoother, the shape has an air of elegance to it, and the overall look doesn't look like a drunk Fast and Furious director designed it.
While the idea of an Integra Type R sounds just way too good for words, there are some questions, there are some roadblocks that could potentially derail an Integra Type R. The biggest one is price. The Civic Type R is already an expensive compact car. Given that an Integra is an upscale Civic, an Integra Type R would logically be an upscale version of the Civic Type R. Will that price it out of the reach of the people who actually want one? Will it basically come down to, well, I really like the Integra Type R, but the Civic Type R over here does everything it does, and it does it for a lower price. The other thing is will it put it into a price point where the people who can actually afford it would prefer something more comfortable, something more practical, something like a, let's just say, luxury sports sedan? These are pretty big questions, and they need to be answered.
Then again, the Gen 3 Integra Type Rs are fetching over $50,000 at auction, so price might not be as big of a factor as we think it is.
Acura is bringing back the Integra. If you're someone my age, someone who grew up in the late 90s and early 2000s, this is cause for huge excitement. The Integra, and more specifically the Integra Type R, is one of those halo JDM cars that when you were younger, you just wanted to drive one, let alone own one. Honda and Acura bringing back the Integra is a huge deal, and it looks, all appearances point to, it should be a very good car. It's based off of the next gen Civic, which is a good car to start with. It handles well. It really should. It looks like it's going to come with a manual transmission option. It just looks like it's going to tick all of the boxes that the old Integra ticked, just with the more modern design, more modern amenities, and things of that nature. If you're anything like me, you cannot wait to see more on the new Integra. We learned a lot from what Honda has provided so far, but we really won't know until they launch the entire vehicle. I'm really excited for that day, but for this video, guys, that's gonna do it. If you enjoyed today's video, consider giving us a thumbs up and subscribing with notifications on so you get all the latest Shifting Lanes content as we release it. The new Integra is back. I am super excited for it, but that's a wrap for this video, guys. I'll catch you next time.